Well, good evening, everyone. I'm excited to introduce Dr. Pan, who joined the CPS core in June as one of our co-directors, replacing Sam Simmons, and she serves as our biostatistician. She joined the GW in 2007 and has already had a very illustrious career. She's currently a professor in the statistics department at the School of Public Health, and she's also a statistician at the GW Biostatistics Center. She is a co-investigator on, I think, 6 funded studies at the moment, funded through the NIH, the FDA, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And she has over 70 publications, peer-reviewed publications in both statistical and clinical publications. And she's on the editorial board of 3 journals. And she has graciously offered to talk to us today on a topic that I'm not quite sure I understand the title, but the title is Standardization of Continuous and Categorical Covariates in Sparse Penalized Regressions and Community Detection with Heterogeneous Block Covariance Model. So I'm eagerly awaiting clarification on the title. So Dr. Pan, we're excited to hear you talk, and it's over to you.
Yeah, thank you. So I recently changed from CCAS to Milken, and so as an introduction of my work, I have when I was a stat, we do methodology studies, like design methods that potentially handle special data sets or has better properties or performances. So that will be my first half. I will talk about the standardization method. I will explain why you have to standardize covariates and what difference and different standardization, what difference does it make, and what we propose. And in fact, for the second part, I will talk about my biostat work. I will talk about the diabetes prevention study, which is not just me. I'm just a co-investigator, lead statistician, but I've been there many years, so I can introduce the trial and everything. So half and half methods, half applied. Hope you are interested. So the first half is, so why do we have to standardize covariates, and what we propose? So in fact, in clinical studies, in collaborations, a lot of times the collaborators will ask me, like, which factor has a bigger impact for the outcome? For example, the outcome could be risk of diabetes. It could be weight, could be mortality rate, could be anything you are interested in. But when they ask, they're naturally referring to there's an impact where you should compare, like weight in pounds or BMI. So that is a little hard. In fact, it's a little ambiguous for statisticians, because when you say impact, the coefficient which measures the impact in regressions usually have a unit, right? Your coefficient will change if your covariate units change. For example, if you use weight, use pounds, or use kilogram, the beta would change, or BMI. So when you have 2 covariate, weight or BMI, they have different units. So can you compare their beta directly if they have different units? So that's a question for me. Like, I was like, they have different units, so their beta corresponding to different amount of change. So what do you mean which one is bigger? The other thing gets more complicated is the covariate may not be continuous. A lot of times we have categorical covariates, like binary. A lot of covariates are binary. Disease history, family history, male, female, African-American or non-African-American, or like multi-category. Race is multi-category, or your the state you live in, the type of insurance you have. So when the covariates are different functional forms, we see different formats, some are continuous, some are categorical, it needs to be defined. what is the impact? What are you actually comparing? So, and it's why it's important. It's not only conceptually important when you're understanding the impact of a covariate on the outcome, it's also technically important when you're doing variable selection. Because if you do sparse penalized regression, which it's a statistical tool which is used for variable selection, the idea is if the beta is small, it will be penalized. It will be shrink to 0. And if the beta is large, it will still be shrinked, but it won't be 0. So, which means the covariates with larger beta will be selected. The ones with smaller beta will be gone, will be unselected. But then, as I explained, the size of beta of the coefficient depends on the units. And it varies for categorical or binary covariate versus continuous covariate. So when you just throw in all your variables, fit a regression and do this variable selection, there are a lot of variability if you don't standardize. In fact, it's wrong if you don't standardize. So these are some quotes from classic statistical books or papers. So basically it's saying like, you have to standardize your covariate before you put them in a model to compare their beta, compare their effect size. And the selection also depends on the units. You have to standardize so the selection is more fair. And in most like regression packages, so like the GLMNet, it's a very popular package to do the variable selection and the regression at the same time. And they have a default standardization, which is true or false. And if you don't select the standardization method, it will be true. And the most methods, like machine learning methods, classification or clustering, they will require you to choose a standardization method before you input your predictors or your covariates. Like this is your variable, but they need to be standardized so they are more comparable to each other, so we can compare their effect size on the same basis. So what are the current options of standardization in statistical softwares? So we have Z-score. This score is, I think it's straightforward. It's just you change every continuous X, the covariate, into a unit, normal distribution, standard normal distribution, which has mean 0 and which doesn't have mean 0. In fact, it just have unit variance, which is the X divided by the sample standard deviation. So of course the variance becomes 1. So basically 1 unit of change in the Z-score means 1 standard deviation of change. So if everyone is on the scale of standard deviation, in a way they're comparable, right? If for weight and BMI, I know they have different units, but each unit in weight means 1 standard deviation of weight change or 1 standard deviation of BMI change. So in a sense, they are comparable. So there are other ways, minimax. So if you do like image processing, you do clustering to capture the main pattern of an image, then you will do minimax. Minimax, the idea is for any covariate, you map them, you project them into the range 0 to 1. So the smallest value is 0. The largest value is 1. And any value in between, you will proportionately map to a probability value, like a fraction value. Gilman and Brain, so they are more technical. Gilman is saying that the Z-score applies to continuous covariate, but it does not apply to binary, although it is used for binary too. Why? Because think about it. If I have a gender variable with probability of female is 0.5, probability of male is also 0.5. The standard deviation of that binary covariate is 0.5. So if you have 0 or 1 divided by 0.5, what does that mean? For 0.5 change in gender, but gender is either 0 or 1. You can't really change for 0.5. You change, there's no value like that for gender. You can't change for half gender, right? So, so he proposes, let's use 2 times standard deviation, which means if the p is 0.5, that's a change of 1, which means you don't change. You divide by 1, you don't change. But then they make the continuous and the binary more comparable. Both are standardized by 2 standard deviation. But this is an approximation because p may not be 0.5. If the probability is not 0.5, then the standard deviation will be less than 0.5. So when p is 0.9 or 0.1, it gets this approximation gets a little far away. And the brain method is a recent method. They started the Z-score method, and the idea is that if you're doing a multivariate regression, you have more than 1 covariate. So what actually matters is the partial standard deviation. It's not the marginal. So it's like the standard deviation of xj that is independent from all the other covariate. It's the independent contribution of x in addition to all the other covariates already in the model. So the difference between Z-score and the brain is the idea of partial versus marginal. It's conditioned on all the other covariates because that's how regression is done. It's you have all the other covariates already there. Then the extra explanation power of x, that's what this xj contributes. So that's the difference. So these are existing methods. However, there's a third, there's this recent paper, I think it's in Annals of Applied Statistics. They discussed the problem of continuous and binary and categorical covariates, which is what we are targeting here. They called it multi-view data. Multi is just a fancy name. Basically, that means your covariates have different formats. Some are continuous, some are binary. So what they do is, anyway, this is some technical issues if you don't standardize. There's so for binary and continuous, they have different threshold for being selected. So it ends up like even for the same impact, you tend to select the continuous covariate instead of the binary. So he proposed a very complicated algorithm instead of standardized covariate. He does like adaptive penalization and random lasso and stable selection. Basically, he permute his data many times, and each time he at a random error, and he do a random lasso. So see who gets selected most of the time. Like if I do it 100 times, and a covariate gets selected 95 out of the 100 random permuted data set, then I would select that covariate. So that's also a data mining idea. It's kind of an ensemble learning. It's if my signal is weak, I don't know, so I kind of do it many times to say the majority vote. If most of the time it gets selected, that's probably true. If only once or twice, that's probably a random signal. So, so that's the existing methods, the situation in the field. So, but what I want to point out is all the existing methods do not specifically address the issue of the multi-view data. I mean, the Baker method, they do address the multi-view data, but their algorithm is super complicated. You have to do it 100 times or 1,000 times. So we want to propose something that's straightforward, that's a one-step standardization, but it targets fair comparison across multi-view data. So let's set up. So we have X1, X2, X3. For example, Y is the risk for diabetes. It's a Cox model. You have age. You have baseline BMI. You have the gender. You have race. You have baseline glucose level, HbA1c. You have all these factors predicting the risk of diabetes. So although what you observe is different formats or multi-view, but we assume underlying covariate is always continuous. So that makes them comparable. If you assume the underlying true form is continuous. Why? That's because think about it. Even for gender, you think it's male or female, it's binary. It may not be, because the risk of the impact of gender on any outcome, it's a combination of many genotypes and a combination of many epigenome metabolomic markers. So if you construct a genetic risk score, if you have more and more markers getting added to your genetic risk score, the score gets continuous, right? It's not just the male are always higher than female, taller than female. In fact, the male has a distribution, female has a distribution, and they overlap. So it's like depend on the specific genotype, or if there is a genetic risk score. An individual female could be taller than an individual male, right? It's not like always male and female is just a clear cut or a higher value. There's a continuous grade when the genetic component change from the female version to the male version. So same thing for race, for all the categorical covariates. You can viewing there is some underlying continuous scheme, but what you observe is you have to cut somewhere for the underlying. So this L is for latent. For the latent covariate, you cut it, you change, you get the observed covariate. You cut it somewhere, categorize it, or by dichotomize it. So so what we do is, the idea is that, so if everything is continuous, then we can compare the beta of the continuous latent variables. And if they have the same beta, then they should be viewed as having the same impact, and they should be selected with the same probability. That's my argument. And that's a good standardization method should do. So the idea is, if what we observe is already binary or categorical, we lose the information. There's no way we can convert back to continuous, because no one observes the continuous version, the latent version. However, for the continuous covariates we observe, we can convert them easily to binary. So everything is binary. If everything is binary, we can just compare the coefficient of the all binary covariates, which are comparable because it's the difference between the level 0 versus level 1. So, but then there are some tricks. How do you convert a continuous covariate to a binary covariate? So it's data driven. The way we do it is data driven. You need to select a P, because think about it, if there is a relationship where you cut it, it will make the difference, different beta. So we want to have a comparable P. So P should be similar to the P to the other binary covariate, their probability in the data set. So for my real data set, FDA opioid data set, in fact, most P are around 0.9. So I chose my P, my cutoff to be 0.9. And the other thing is, do you always cut? So if you have varieties of P in your data set from small to large, I would recommend 0.5, something in the middle, not too large, not too small. So the other thing is, do you always cut at the quantiles, at the threshold? No, not necessarily. If you assume there is a relationship you would cut at a quantile. But what if there is no relationship? The relationship is just flat. So it doesn't make sense to cut at the quantile. Because if you cut at the quantile of the relationship, you will end up artificially creating a relationship. So what we do is we first test whether XY has a relationship. If it has a relationship, I do the quantile given the functional form of X and Y, cut, make sure 10% are above, 90% are below. If there's no relationship, I just do a random cut, whatever. Some are 1, some are 0. It doesn't matter. I just randomly convert 10% to be 1. But it doesn't, 90% to be 1, but it doesn't have to be the 90% with the largest Y. No, just any. So basically, we do a test first to decide if there is a relationship or not. If there is a relationship, you group the X values corresponds to the larger Y, and you group the X values corresponds to smaller Y, and you dichotomize it. So it's purely data-driven method. And there are a lot of criticism about dichotomize your covariate because you lose information. And it's the variance and everything. So so if you, I mean, it's a risky method. Like people was first things to dichotomize. You say no, we don't do that. But for this method, I want to clarify is we are just doing the dichotomization for the purpose of variable selection. So when you fit your model, I will still use, after I select them, using the selected covariates, I will still use the original form to avoid the loss of information. So that's the justification. It's for one purpose, for fair selection. And we have some theoretical derivations basically saying if the underlying latent covariate has the same beta, and if you do this transformation after dichotomize, the binary covariate would still have the same beta. So I'll show some simulation results. So this is, I have a continuous covariate, have a binary covariate, have a multi-categorical covariate. So you see, if I don't do standardization, the covariate of the binary version of the covariate would be much larger than the continuous version of the covariate, although I generated with the same beta for the latent continuous variable. But after I dichotomize it with this 0.5 or 0.7 or 0.9 with different quantiles, the coefficient, the beta changes. So if you do standardization, the previous standardization, it corrects it a little bit, but doesn't correct all of them. But our method, it would have a very comparable beta because everything is binary. Of course, they would have the same beta. And in terms of variable selection, so if you see, let's say, if you don't do covariate, if you don't do any standardization, the continuous covariate gets favored. As I explained, there's a beta mean threshold. It's lower for continuous covariate. So even they have the same impact, the continuous covariate gets selected more. These are noise. They shouldn't be selected. The first 6 are signals. The second batch of 6 covariates are noise. They have beta 0. They shouldn't be selected. But regardless, you can see that continuous, if you don't do anything, continuous gets favored. So if you do these scores, so compare our method. Our sensitivity is not the highest, but our specificity is higher because we select the noise less. So overall, we have the smallest BIC, the highest AUC, not the highest, one of the highest, among the highest accuracies, prediction accuracies for the Y. Selection accuracy is for the covariates. So we have the highest selection accuracy. We have the lowest FDR. We have lower sensitivity, but much higher specificity. So our method in terms of fair selection, I think overall we are better. And we did many different distributions, different correlated, not correlated. So it's more obvious on the real data. So this is a summer project with the FDA investigator. She has this opioid out-office survey. So this survey has been done by the Health Statistics Office, also in DC, since 1980s. They do it every year, and they do a random sample. They do block design. They select the block, and in the block they select some physicians, and the selector, all the patients visit this physician in this year, and they collect the visit information, the prescription, the patient, and the physician characteristics. So the idea is what kind of visits will have a higher probability to get an opioid prescription, because opioid abuse is a health crisis. The death rate is more than cancer and gun fatality combined. So really, more people die of opioid than cancer. So if and there we have 177 covariates. You're not going to fit a model with 177 covariates. It's going to be highly noisy. It's not going to give you a story. So we're going to do first variable selection. And this, because it's a survey, so most of the time it's just a box. You click here, click there, you know, so they try to narrow down the type of answers you have instead of have a lot of narrative text. It's hard to process. It's much easier if I just have boxes. So most of the covariates are categorical, only 3 continuous. So that makes perfect sense. We want to do the standardization. So all the binary, categorical, and continuous covariates are all comparable in terms of beta and are all selected with a fair probability. So you can see with our method, we selected 22, the least number of predictors. But we still have the smallest, among the small, brain is a little smaller, among the smallest PIC and highest AUC and highest log likelihood. But compared to brain and our method, they selected a double number of covariates. With double the covariates, they only decreased the BIC tiny little bit. So it's really not worth it for the additional 22 covariates. So this is a plot. You can see with more and more covariates getting added to the model, the BIC gets lower. The AUC is a measure of prediction accuracy, gets higher. So you can see that the proposed method, in general, if you have the same number of covariates selected, we are the lowest or the highest, except in the end. But we're not going to go to that tail. Those dots are the cross-validation results where we select. So you can see that's what it means. Brain method, slightly lower BIC, slightly higher AUC, but the price is you need to use 44 covariates. Instead of our method, you use 22 covariates, much simpler. So always model fitting simpler, the better. If you can tell the story, if you can make accurate predictions. So under the covariates selected by our method, in fact, most of them overlap with the clinic paper that's already published. So it's like a number of medications, injury, and arthritis, primary care, physician, tobacco use, number of visits, depression. So with those indicators, the likelihood of getting an opioid prescription goes up. So that's the method. It's already published this year it's a UK journal, Statistical Methods of Medical Research. So that's the stat talk I'm going to give. I'm going to skip the community detection method, which is even more technical. For today's audience, I think we should have some fun. So the other part of my work is at the what did I do? Oh yeah, it's at the Biostat Center. I am a lead statistician, and I am writing proposals. I am a contact PI in 2 proposals going out next month. But my longest partnership, the project I love most, is the diabetes prevention program. I'm really proud of it. So what we have done everything in data analysis, whatever you could do, and very persuasive evidence from data. So diabetes, it's a global crisis, and in fact, it's for US, I feel it's plateaued, but for the developing countries like China, I visited China for medical informatics conference. Diabetes is the new epidemic. Like it's just skyrocketing in China. So many people getting the rates going up, the incidence rates and the prevalence.
Thanks. Sorry to interrupt. I don't think we're seeing the full slide.
Okay, let's see. Are you
I think we're seeing it in presenter view, so it's a little bit smaller.
Okay. Hold on.
I think it's okay. I think everybody can still see it.
Better?
It, yeah.
Do you see it?
Now we're back to you. Yeah, we're back. We've lost it.
So let me share my screen again.
Yeah.
Do you see it?
Now it's good.
Yes.
It's good. So basically, so that's like the first, the background section you write in a proposal why you're studying this, because diabetes is a big problem. Why am I and this is what in US, and you can see over time the population is getting obese, and the diabetes prevalence is getting higher. The color gets darker, and it's there is a area difference, like in the south or east, it's worse. And here, so risk factors of diabetes, that's well known. Age usually occurs around 50, menopause, BMI. So obese is it's #1 risk factor, and fasting glucose, 2-hour glucose, plasma glucose, and for men and women, and family history and race. In fact, family history. So if you have a family history, it's much higher. And for men and women, it's hard to see this. For different studies, there are different results. But for race, what I remember was African Americans have higher risk, and Asians have a not higher risk, have a prevalence, but it's a lower threshold for BMI. So Asians, even you look skinny, you could still be at risk for type 2 diabetes. So there are so the common diagnosis of diabetes occurs when people have early complications, when they notice some symptoms. But clinically, in fact, it's a little too late. The optimal window for prevention is gone. So what we target, in fact, is as early as possible when the impaired impaired glucose tolerance. At that stage, we want to start the prevention. So because it's a chronic disease, it's not like you can cure it, but you can live with it. And the more you delay it, the more you prevent it, the less complications, the less damage it could accumulate. Because nowadays, people are not going to die because of diabetes, but what we care is the quality of life. So we want to prevent it. So that's our target population. It's people at high risk. And the way we define the enrollment criteria, the high risk population is you have to, back then, that was in the 90s, we didn't use HbA1c, so we used the fasting glucose. The 2-hour glucose is between 140 and 199. The fasting glucose is 95 or 125. We have loose our inclusion criteria for American Indians because that's one of our target population. We want a decent number of American Indians. And the BMI is 24, but for Asians it's lower. That's because the threshold for Asians is just lower. So we got a very diverse ethnicity group population, and they're screened about 31,000, and we enrolled 3,819 patients, and they are randomized after the screening. Once they sign the informed consent, everything, we randomize at the baseline measurements. They are randomized to lifestyle or metformin or placebo. There was a triglycerin group that was stopped early due to adverse events early in the trial, like year 1, year 2. There were a few. So for safety concerns, we stopped the last arm, the 4th arm. So eventually we only have 32, 34 in 3 arms. That's the trial. And lifestyle. So if you want to prevent diabetes, one thing you could do is change your lifestyle. So the whole goal is to lose weight. So nowadays people can do the GLP, can do the shots, or the new medication on market. I don't know. It seems very amazing. People could lose 20 to 30% of their weight by just getting a shot a week. It's expensive, several hundred a week, but a lot of celebrities are doing that. But this trial was started in the 90s. So the proposed way to lose weight was exercise and calorie calculation, control your diet, the traditional way. So, and the goal is you have to lose 7% of baseline weight. Usually occurs at 6 months. But what we observe is they gain some back. They don't really always, they lose weight immediately if you change your lifestyle, but then after 6 months, by like 2 years, they start gaining them back. Not all back, but close to original. So we still lose some weight. It depends on how much you maintain your lifestyle, but it gets hard. And we had personal trainers. We have group study sessions. We give them incentives. So we try. First, these individuals who are enrolled, they are motivated. They are concerned about their health because they either have a family history or they already have impaired glucose tolerance. Second is we have a really good coordinators and stakeholder group, engagement group. We try to persuade people, engage them to come back. So that's a lot of that's the hard thing about clinical trials. But at GW, the Biostat Center, I think that's what we are good at. We are good at data too, but I think the administration, the maintenance, the retention, enrollment, all these people-to-people work, it costs time, but that's really what you make a trial successful. You have to make sure people stay, people comply, all those things. So the 3 years enrollment, recruitment, we have mostly between 45 and 59, 31% younger and 20% older. So by now, in fact, the median age, the baseline median age was 50, and by now the median age is 70. It's like 77 or something, 78. So we really have an aging cohort. I think one day, I mean, won't be long. Probably most of the participants are gone, then you have to stop. But it's like the Framingham heart study. You followed them, their whole aging process from midlife to the last. And it's very diverse. As I said, we targeted the minorities. So we got 4% of Asian and 5% of American Indian with loosened standards. And that's the baseline characteristics. They all have some somewhat high fasting glucose and 2-hour glucose, a little bit obese, and 16% of women have gestational diabetes history. And somehow, like most of the trials I am in, women are more, there are always more women than male, more female than male. Females are more interested in research or care about health. Average age is 50. And here are the weight change. So you can see that in the lifestyle group, the weight change in the first 6 months is dramatic. So it's effective if people get active, if people eat less. But however, they gradually gain back and then stabilize at about 3 or 4% weight loss. That's realistic. Most of the weight studies, you will observe this phenomenon. And for the metformin group, it's a gradual change. They also, well, you know, metformin, people will lose weight if you take metformin, but it's not as dramatic. And this the Kaplan-Meier curve of diabetes risks. So you can see that there's a significant reduction for the lifestyle group and the metformin group and the placebo group. So it is very effective. It's a strong 31% reduction for metformin and almost 60% reduction for lifestyle. So that's the phase 1, and it was very successful. And we stopped the trial because it's proved the efficiency is proved, the hypothesis test is done, and we had a bridge period, and then we start providing lifestyle to all the participants. So that's for ethical reasons. You can't stop them from benefiting from the better treatment. And diabetes incidence rates for male and female, and for 3 treatment groups, you can see that males have higher incidence rates, but all the 3 bars, the proportionate are about the same. And for different race, but American Indians is pretty high, but we have a small sample size. African Americans is high and Asians are high. So type 2 and type 1 are very different. Type 1 is the non-Hispanic white is at higher risk, but type 2 is African Americans and Asians. And age group, similar. In fact, there's not too much age difference, but still the placebo group has the highest incidence, then metformin, then lifestyle. And so if you focus just on the lifestyle, you can see the older the age, the more the benefit, because the incidence rates goes down more. And if you focus on the metformin group, you can see somehow the older the age, the less the benefit. So if you are young, you want to take metformin. If you are old, you want to do lifestyle. Anyway, if you have a choice, well, you might do both. But in terms of the interaction with age, body mass index, so of course, with higher BMI, you should have higher risks. But Still, for people with slightly overweight, the benefit is amazing, right? For the lifestyle. And for the really overweight group, obese group, it's still both metformin and lifestyle benefit a lot, 50% reduction. And there's a gestational diabetes. If you had prior gestational diabetes, you benefit more. And if you don't, you still benefit. See, you 51 versus 14%. And the genetic factors, nature versus nurture, we've singled out this known diabetes related genotype. And you can see for different genotype, this TT genotype has much higher risks. But if you do metformin, it's lower. If you do lifestyle, then this TT genotype are almost the same as the other two genotypes. So this genotype increase people's risk of diabetes. But if you exercise, you can reverse it. You can get like lessen the impact. And we have a mean weight change from baseline. So if you lose weight, if you lose 1 kilogram, you associate with 16%. So relative risk 0.84, 16% risk reduction. And in our trial, I think most people end up losing about 4 pounds, or 4 kilogram. Yeah, the unit was 4 kilograms. So that's a lot risk reduction. So that's what we find in DPP. And we followed. Do I have time? Should I continue? I mean, we have basically we just studied everything for this cohort. We're still following.
I want to see what happened.
Okay, we are in phase 4 right now. We are funded through 2027, but the idea is we will keep publishing papers. The data collection will end in 2027, but we will probably have 2 more years publishing more papers. So we had a bridge period just to wash out. Everyone gets some modified lifestyle, not as intensive, not like personal coach or like a nutrition expert diet, but everyone is recommended you go exercise. So we give them free gym access, those kind of things. And then in July 2022, we started the diabetes prevention program outcome studies. And then everyone followed on the same scale. And then we did phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and we are now in phase 4. So really, I could retire on this one study. I don't know. Some of the co-investigators in this program did retire on the non-follow-up. So long-term. So even after so many years, not 30, some are 30, some are 27, because the enrollment is 93 to 96. We still observe, so this is at the end of DPP. We have significant risk reduction. After 10 years, the difference is smaller, but it's still there. It's like metabolic memory. The body, whatever you did to your body, you will still benefit many years later. So the difference gets smaller and smaller between groups, but we are always benefiting. And other benefits is we have lower HbA1c and lower blood pressure, lower lipid levels. That's what exercise do, right? And the CVD risks. So it's so for the HDL, you can see the lifestyle, the triangle group is higher. For the non-HDL for the bad cholesterol. The lifestyle group is better. The metformin seems, I don't know, it might be an effect. It seems close with metformin has an effect. It is better. Metformin is also better. Placebo is always the worst for the LDL and for the SBP, DBP. So lifestyle significantly reduce the blood pressure, while metformin, little bit, not really. So those are follow-up years. So because in the so why they get together, they get merged together, it's we are giving everyone lifestyle. And 10 years medication, so that's the medical cost, health resources. You can see that the total, for the total, the lifestyle it's higher, but yeah, the lifestyle is higher. We have so cost of treatment, that's because the cost of treatment is higher to engage those lifestyle people. Metformin is very cheap. Placebo, you don't have to do anything. But the outside study, like the medical cost, like medications or hospitalization, it's lower for lifestyle. But on average, it's about the same. So lifestyle, you spend more money to exercise, but you spend less money in getting medication, in going to see your doctor or getting hospitalization. So it evens out. Slightly higher total for lifestyle. So that's the summary slide. So lifestyle not only reduce diabetes risks, it has benefits in other aspects. So basically, we want to see, these are copied from the ADA, one of the ADA keynote sessions. So in the future, we are metformin, the impact of metformin on many different outcomes. We are studying that. Metformin have not only reduce diabetes risks, there are evidence it also lower risk for CVD or cancer. So DPP has I would say it has been one of the it is the largest in the US, one of the largest in the world. So basically Europe has their own like Scandinavia population, and Asian, China, Japan, they all have their own diabetes prevention study, but we are the first and the biggest in US compared to the other studies. And it has lead to many changes in the clinic practice in diabetes treatment and in the health system, like what are covered, what are not covered, what should be recommended. It changed the diabetes prevention guidelines, and so NIDDK, CDC, and they all did start like programs to for the prevention of diabetes. I better stop, but basically it's all the good comments about DPP over the years, and it was cited by Frank Collins, the NIH director, to in his report to Congress. He cited the results of DPP, so it's one of the successful ones. Screening, intervention. So it really changed. It really changed the practice in the diabetes prevention. So we are still following it. So those are what I meant. I think in US, the diabetes prevalence seems plateaued, but in Asian countries, they're still skyrocketing. So, but we believe the past 20, 30 years, DPP has played a role. That's it. That's it. I have 2 minutes left. Perfect timing.
Thank you. That was really amazing. And it's also, I'm sure, pretty gratifying to see the research that you're involved with having such a huge impact. I mean, I think that's what we all hope for when we start a research project, that it might have a clinical impact that we can actually see. And, this is actually, really, I mean, one of the most, astounding clinical results in its application broadly. And so I'm pretty impressed. We only have like a couple minutes, so I'll open the floor if anybody has a burning question. Otherwise, I was going to just try and get my head around why the impact of lifestyle modification was so much more impactful in the over 60 group than the 25 to 44-year-old group, where it seemed like the impact of lifestyle performance was pretty equal on the risk reduction for diabetes. I'm just trying to get my head around that.
The age is a very interesting thing. It's for the age group, I think for the younger group you should go for the older group you should go lifestyle. For the younger group, you should go metformin.
Almost, right? I mean, that's the thing, is like, how do you stop someone in the placebo group also doing lifestyle modifications in the study, right? You may have people that are doing more than one thing in a certain group, right?
So in the trial period, it was strictly randomized and complied. So the placebo group were not offered any extra exercise or advice or anything, and they don't really lose weight. That's what we observed in the weight curve. But in the lifestyle group, they lost, they first lost like 7 kilograms, then they bounce back to 3 or 4 kilograms. So there is actual weight loss. Age is a funny thing. So this is the 3 age groups we used many times, and we observe there's an interaction of metformin effects for older age too. So I don't know. Does it have to do menopause? Like after menopause, people kind of stabilize, so their weight, and but nowadays it's getting more interesting. There are all these new treatments, right? New treatments for weight loss. So what it does to diabetes or to other disease risks, it'll be an interesting issue. Hey, Anna, you have.
I think Anna Maria has a question for you.
Yeah, thank you so much for the presentation. My question is actually for the first part of your presentation. I'm wondering about interactions, like how could interactions be included in the selection of the covariates? Right.
So all the simulation, all the setup, I did not include any interaction. So basically, I would just want to compare the marginal, not the marginal, just the no interaction, just the average effects of each covariate. So my idea is, if you think there is an interaction, then doesn't matter the covariates involved in the interaction, they should always be in. So you don't have to do the variable selection. If you have evidence of a significant interaction, then you include everything. Include every term in the interaction anyway, regardless they are selected or not.
Thank you.
A quick comment for Dr. Siegel. You're a role model for us all riding that bicycle. It would be good. We'd be in the lifestyle group. And Dr. Pan, now that we know you have great expertise in longitudinal analysis, we have quite a number of cohort HIV studies that you clearly have the methodologic chops to handle, and so this was very interesting for me to learn about your areas of expertise that we can consult you.
We have so much data in there. I think we can always publish on that, but one major issue in longitudinal study was the compliance issue. People stopped following the assignment. I mean, they're real life. You can't always say, you're randomized to placebo or don't do anything, people will change. After 20, 30 years, they forget whatever they were assigned to. So a lot of methods and it's time varying, like their status, whatever treatment they are taking is changing over time. So we are writing a review paper for diabetes care, summarizing the metformin effects on different outcomes and what is real metformin effects, what is confounded. So what we observe is confounded. So by now, 26 years, close to 30 years, we don't observe metformin effects anymore, but that is weird because we think metformin should help. Sometimes you even get like an increased risk associated with metformin, which doesn't make sense at all. So that's because people are not sticking to their assignments anymore.
Fascinating, thank you.
All right. In the absence of anybody else with a question, well, Jen, I want to thank you again. That was a really amazing talk, and I love the clinical application of your statistical work as well. So appreciate it. I think Anna Maria is seconding that those words of congratulations for your work. So thank you again, and appreciate everybody taking the time to join us tonight. And we'll see you in a month.
Thank you all. It's late. Now you're using your dinner time staying here. Appreciate it. Bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye, Jen. Thank you.